Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 71.
It's so hard to have patience, especially for, I think, most people in this space. We're go-getters. I try to remind myself that the grass is not going to heal overnight.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. Imagine a world where ranching nurtures our earth. Welcome to the vision of the Noble Research Institute. This nonprofit champions regenerative agriculture, turning research into practical solutions for farmers and ranchers. On their 14,000 acres of working ranches, they showcase principles that enhance soil health, boost grazing productivity, and uplift the entire ecosystem. Excitingly, they've just launched Essentials of Regenerative Ranching, a hands-on course for those eager to pioneer change in agriculture. And keep your ear open for an upcoming grazing class this fall. For a sustainable future in ranching, turn to Noble Research Institute. Learn more about them on their website at noble.org. That's NOBLE.org. On today's episode, we have Jason Contreras. He is from Sow the Land. You may have caught him on YouTube. He is working with small acreage and introducing grazing animals to it. So we're going to talk about what animals he's grazing and how it's going on his small acreage. It's a great show. But before we get to Jason, let's do 10 seconds about my farm. Right now, I'm kind of busy because I did not manage my Cerisa lespedeza very well. In fact, Michael Vance on last episode said something about if there's not some part of your farm you're embarrassed about, you might need to talk to someone else. Well, I'm pretty embarrassed. My Cerisa has gotten out of hand and nothing wants to eat it. So I am mowing it down partly. I don't like doing that at all because I just think driving a tractor over brush hogging is just not the way I want to do it. Anyway, but that's what I'm doing. And then I plan on planting a few cool seasons. I like to do a few each year. Still not have mastered that, but I like to do it and I feel like I get some benefit from it. I mentioned Michael on there. We had a wonderful episode last week on episode 70 with Michael Vance. If you didn't catch it, you need to go catch it. And also, we have the Grazing Grass community on Facebook. We had a question or two about last episode, and Michael jumped on there and answered those. It's one of the great benefits of the Grazing Grass community. You got a question for one of our guests? Most of the time, they are on there. And if you are an international listener, a few months ago, we tweeted out we had been downloaded in over 100 countries. I have another exciting milestone to share with you in just a moment. But lately, we've been focused kind of on one of those countries. Our guests for the last few episodes have all been from the United States, and we are working hard to get some international guests on. And that will be happening soon. So that will go with the few countries we've had guests on. We've had guests on from Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, and we hope to expand that soon. So if you're not a member of the Grazing Grass community on Facebook, we encourage you to go over and join it. You can get there from the link on grazinggrass.com or just on Facebook, search for Grazing Grass Community. Also, I mentioned we had an amazing benchmark or milestone hit. We passed, and you may have seen this on our social media channels, we passed 100,000 downloads for the lifetime of the podcast, which is just amazing to me. And in fact, before I got on here, I checked, we're over 101,000 already. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And there's no way we could have got here without you. And just like you found the podcast by someone sharing it with you or you searching for it, came across it, would you share these episodes with someone you know that may get a benefit from them? I really appreciate it. I never dreamed we would be at 100,000 downloads. That's just an amazing feat in my mind. And we are moving quickly past it and greatly appreciate you. Enough of all that. Let's talk to Jason. Jason, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're excited you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jason, to get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation?
Yeah, currently it's me, my wife, and I have an 11-year-old. We live on 14 acres in the mountains of North Carolina, Western North Carolina. And we just been here maybe a year and a half. And it's an old horse property that we're trying to develop into our, I guess you could say, our family farm. We mainly grow food for ourselves. And this is our homestead. And we didn't start out here. We've been in this area for 7 years. And prior to that, we were living in the Los Angeles area and just outside of LA. And that's where me and my wife were born and raised, and never lived anywhere else, and wasn't around farming until we moved here 7 years ago. And so what started all that was when it's been, I didn't know how long. I was 30 years old and I got diagnosed with cancer. And that really started changing our way of thinking. Started looking at labels on food and started figuring out like what should we be eating and not eating. And, we had a standard American lifestyle, standard American diet. And it was around that time, I did 6 months of chemo and that was it. And, lost all my hair and I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it was during that time where we were trying to figure all this out. And a lot of questions started popping up, as soon as we started questioning the way we lived and the way our diet was, we started talking about growing our own food, because we thought if we're really going to know what's in our food, we need to grow it. And so, but we'd never done that before. We didn't know what that looked like. I don't think I even knew a single person that had a tomato plant in their backyard. I didn't know anybody who had chickens, nothing. I mean, we're just outside of Los Angeles, so there wasn't not like any land around. We had a house, 4-bedroom house, nice house, and we had a little backyard. And so that's what we started doing. We bought some plant starts at the local hardware store and just planted them. After you growing that first tomato plant, all of a sudden we felt like farmers. There's something very satisfying of growing something from a seed to harvesting it, to cooking it with your family and eating it at the dinner table. We fell in love with that. And so from there, it was just, we started joking around like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we went and found some more land so we could maybe have chickens? Maybe we could grow our own meat. But it became it was like a joke, like, haha, that was never going to happen. Because it was just, because we lived in that area and like all our family lived in that area. Like grandma lived next door, on the next street over, like all our family was pretty much within an hour from each other. And that's where we grew up. And so we thought, well, if we were to find land, it definitely wouldn't be in this area. So in us leaving the area is just not going to happen. Like that was already our thought. So in the course of 6 years, it was all that time where we started questioning more things like my job, my wife's job. She had a career in the fashion industry. I had a office 9-to-5 job. I worked in the architectural engineering side of things, and I did that for 17 years. We started questioning those things of like, what makes us happy? Are we happy at our jobs? And I started not to be happy. I didn't want to be in an office anymore. And my wife, after I was in remission of cancer, she became a stay-at-home mom. We had our daughter and, she got tired of driving 3 hours in traffic every day. And, all these things are coming at the same time. And also we started to live more minimally, got rid of one car, went down to one car, got rid of our TV. And we started to develop this, looking back at it now, it was this homestead mindset in the city, which I don't think that was a thing, that we thought about at the time, but now I can say that. And we started to figure out how to grow our own food, even when we did it in like some raised bed, square foot gardening, try to figure out how maybe we could can some pickles, so we started to develop that mindset and slowly getting rid of stuff in our house and still joking around that, hey, we're going to go find some land somewhere. And so at one point we had got rid of almost everything in our home. Couches were gone. Nothing was on the walls. We had our kitchen table that was left over. And we said, okay, pretty much the only thing left that we have is this kitchen table. And if we sell this kitchen table, I think this is not a joke anymore. I think we're serious about this. And so we sold the kitchen table, and shortly thereafter we sold our house. And the plan was that year we moved in with mom. That definitely felt like we were taking a step backwards after, going to college, buy the house, have the child, and like, that didn't make sense. But what we wanted was some land, even if it was 1 acre, to grow more food. And so we took the whole year off of trying to continue, trying to get out of debts and figuring that out, what that looked like. And so we just moved in with mom and we looked at various places of where we could move. We're more so on the West Coast that we looked. But at the same time, I had this comfortable 9-to-5 job. I didn't know how to get out of that. And so we had vacationed out in the Asheville, North Carolina area, and we fell in love with it. We felt like a good sense of homesteading community out here, and a lot of local small farms type things. And it rained. California didn't get a whole lot of rain. It was green. There was trees, fresh air. It was not smog. And we really fell in love with that. And so we felt like this is where we needed to be. I went back home and we thought, well, if we're going to really know if that's where we need to be, I need to go look for places. And so end of 2015, I went down by myself. My wife trusted me to go by myself and find some land. And so I found a 1.5 acre. It was abandoned for a year. No one lived there. And it was a single wide mobile home, rundown mobile home. It checked everything off the list that we wanted. It had a creek running in the back and it was fairly flat. So we bought it. And as far as my job, I didn't know how to get out of it. And so what I ended up doing is just quitting. We just left, and with no job, and we had no friends or family out here. But the thing that we wanted was to be together as a family, grow as much food as we can, and try to be healthy, and to figure out how to work for ourselves. I did not want to go back to a 9-to-5 office job, and we would figure it out. On paper, it made absolutely no sense. How is this going to work? You need to work, but I had no connections. We felt really drawn to this area where we needed to be. And so that's what we did. We left, and we had sold most of our stuff in the 6 years. At the time, we had a 4-year-old. So me, my wife, my 4-year-old, and we left, and we've been here ever since. And ever since, I've never been back to an office job, and we outgrew the 1.5 acres in 6 years, which we felt like we were ready to take the next step on raising larger animals. That's where we moved to our 14 acres that we are at today.
That was quite a leap of faith to go across the country and embark on your new journey.
Yes, it was just hoping that if this was meant to be, it would all work out.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And before your diagnosis of cancer, was this even on your radar at all?
Not at all. I mean, I really do I thank God for cancer every day, because I don't think that I would even know that this whole other life would be out there for us if I did not get cancer. I really think if I didn't get cancer, I would still be in my office job, or we would still be back in LA, just doing our thing, not knowing that this whole other life exists for us.
Oh, yeah. Cancer has a way of opening your eyes to what's important. We just went through a cancer deal with my wife that we completed a year ago, and everything's going good. And I trust that everything's going good with you, and that's a blessing.
Yes.
When you moved to North Carolina, you got your acre and a half. I assume you went to planting everything you could grow.
Yeah. I mean, I had read some books and stuff, and this was, I guess, kind of pre-YouTube. I mean, I feel like you could look at a lot of YouTube videos and you could kind of learn from that, but this is kind of before that started really getting big. So we read, some books and some blog posts and stuff like that and documentaries. And so they all told you to don't do anything for at least a year, right? But that's so difficult because, we moved out here. I was like, the reason why we're here is to grow food. Like, that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, I rented a tiller and I just tilled up a spot and we just started from there. And from there, the garden grew and grew every single year. Also, what we wanted to do is raise our own meat chickens, broilers. And so I built a movable coop because I had read when I was in my office job, I would like Google stuff, like terms started popping up that as we did more research on like healthy food, like pastured poultry started popping up, like I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what pastured poultry was. I didn't know what grass-fed beef was. This was in 2015. So I remember typing in, what is pastured poultry? Joel Salatin's name was the only thing that would pop up.
Oh, yeah.
Like Polyface Farm, like that was the only thing that would pop up, really. And so I thought, wow, it's just like, because we wanted to buy pastured poultry, but there was nothing in our area that had it. But then right before we left, Primal Pastures popped up and they started selling some stuff. Now that, they're one of the top pastured poultry farms out there. And they actually taught us how to butcher a chicken because we had took a workshop before we left California at their farm. That opened up our eyes on like, hey, we could do this. It brought it down to our level because I'm like, these are just normal guys. They're not farmers. They didn't start off as farmers. And in my mind, I was expecting old McDonald with overall, but they were not that. And so that helped us bring it to our level and say, okay, we can do this too. And so we started with broiler chickens on our 1.5 acres in a movable coop. Started with 25 chickens and started moving around, some egg layers, a garden, and we kind of just went from there.
At the time, were you just raising for your own consumption?
Yes, that was just the goal. But it's funny, like when people somehow the word gets around that you farm or you have these animals and somehow people get the word and they like find you and they start asking you questions or you start getting like emails and phone calls. And I remember a chef contacted me. He was a chef in town and he was like, I hear you raise pastured poultry. And I was like, yes, but it's for ourselves. Like I'm not selling it, but he's just like, I don't care. I want to buy it. It didn't matter to him. Like he just knew I raised it and how I raised it. And so that's kind of funny how that works out. But it was mainly for ourselves and seeing if we can do it.
Through that first experience of raising those pastured poultry, those broilers, get that R and all those letters in there. How'd that go for you?
So there was a local farm that was raising broilers, but they were raising a heritage breed barred rock, and they were dual purpose. They were slower growing, and they were pretty much our neighboring farm. And I thought, well, because initially I was like, I want to raise the Freedom Rangers, and then I saw this farm next to us that was raising these for meat, and I thought, well, they're next to us, let's just buy from them. And so we bought 25 chickens from them, and not really knowing anything about them, I knew they were slower growing, but I figured it'd be like the same as a Red Ranger or Freedom Ranger. They are slower growing. Those barred rocks, they ended up taking like 18 weeks. I fed them on all organic diet. And at the time I was buying 50-pound bags of feed at the local feed store. It was very expensive. 18 weeks. They were so slower growing. By the time we butchered them, they were maybe 3 pounds. I shouldn't even butchered them. I should have just kept them for egg layers. But I didn't know, I think I did the math and it cost me like something like $30 to raise one chicken. I thought, this is not it. Like, this is not working. We had to figure something out. And so let's go back and let's start with the Cornish cross and go from there, and so that first go around was a little tough because I didn't think it was worth it at all raising them. The rain here, not compared to like Southern California, sometimes it pours like crazy, right? And so I remember one night it started pouring and I got so worried about those chickens. I was running out there. I was grabbing the extra tarps. I was throwing them over the coop and I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to drown. That was not the case at all. But looking back, I thought it's funny to think back now because they were totally fine. It was just me. I was just not used to that rain. And so it was just kind of funny.
Now, since that time, you mentioned going to Cornish crosses. Is that what you're continuing to raise?
We have been alternating between Cornish crosses and the Red Ranger bird. Now, it's really just about a time thing. Like, so we could fit in, because we don't raise them all year long. It's basically spring, summer. So that way we could fit in, because you can't beat the, 8-week turnaround for a Cornish cross versus the 12 weeks for a Red Ranger. So we've been alternating like every other one, the Cornish cross, so that we can fit in more birds. But I like the Red Ranger bird a lot better than the Cornish cross because they just look more healthier. They're not so Frankensteinish.
Tough question for you. When they're on a plate, can you tell the Freedom Ranger or Red Ranger from the Cornish cross?
Now, I did do a blind taste test on my YouTube channel, and the Red Ranger did win.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look up that video.
But for the most part, they pretty much taste the same. I guess the Red Ranger, I would say, is a little bit more juicier. I'd say maybe a little bit more darker meat. But I mean, yeah, they're all good.
I've tried tons of things, and I raised pasture poultry 1 year, and I used Cornish crosses, and we just raised them for ourselves. And I wanted to see how much money it would cost and go through it. I don't know if it was my feed or what. My wife she's like, I thought they would be better tasting. I'm like, well, we know what's all in them. They're so much better than the store. But also when I figured the finances on it, it was pretty expensive for us to raise those. And that's going to be on me, my first time doing it. And I keep thinking, I'll do it again when I have time. It's just a matter of finding time.
Oh, yeah. If we're going to buy that chicken anyways, first of all, we raise it on organic feed, organic pasture-raised poultry. You can't really find that.
And you're able to buy organic feed locally?
Yes. Well, I have it shipped. We buy it from organic farm. The feed that we buy it from, they're about 4 hours away. We have it shipped here or local, and I go pick it up. But I buy it in bulk now. I buy it in the big totes, which makes it more cheaper. But, you can't find organic pastured poultry even at the local farmer's market. You really can't find it. If we're going to buy that, it's cheap. It is cheaper. It is cheaper for us to grow it ourselves than to buy organic pasture-raised poultry at another farm, That's how we think of it as.
I think I know the answer to this. You'd mention it, but you all process your own chickens.
We started doing that on our 1.5 acres right away. And over the years, I mean, people started asking us like, hey, can we come over and show me how to do it? And it was really just people that we'd meet in the community, neighbors and stuff. And we would be like, yeah, sure. If you guys want, we could use the help. Sure. And we started every single time. It was like somebody new. And so after a while, we're like, oh, I wonder what it would look like, if we opened it up to not just our neighbor, but people that say watch us on YouTube, or social media, if we posted it on there. And so that's when we just started to having workshops where people come. We started doing that 1.5 acres where we have like maybe 5 or 10 people come out, they pay for a workshop and we teach people that way. And so now, this is probably our 5th year teaching people how to butcher a chicken. And then, so over the years, you get better at it, the more you do it. And now like last year, I think we had 50 people here, not at one time, but individual times of showing people how to be more self-sufficient and do it that way. And then we also have our online course that we developed for people that can't come to a hands-on workshop, but they can buy an online course if they wanted to.
Oh, very nice. Now, with the chickens, you got started there on your 1.5 acres with chickens. Did you all add any other livestock through those years, or did you add some when you went to the 14 acres?
When we were still on our 1.5 acres, we were comfortable with the chickens. And so about, I would say, year 4 of being there, we got 2 regular feeder pigs and we raised them on the 1.5 acres, and we butchered them there also ourselves. That's when after we started raising the pigs, that's when we said, okay, I think we've kind of outgrown what we're doing here. And we wanted to get I wanted to get like some steers, raise some beef or some sheep or something like that. So that's one of the reasons why we sold that place and got the 14, because as soon as we got the 14, we got 2 steers. We raised them for about a year, and then we butchered those guys ourselves, and then kept on doing with the pigs and then turkeys. We got pretty much every animal besides sheep. We haven't done sheep yet.
So these other species you've got, you're feeding your chickens organically. Did you feed them organically? Did you did you grass finish your steers?
Yeah, they were raised on 100% grass with no grain. And it's one of those things where I mentioned before, like all of a sudden people know that you do these things. You'll start to get like random phone calls like, hey, I got a milk cow. Do you want them? Like you start having people handing you animals, and like, it's hard to say no because you want to do it all, but it's important to like, hey, let me calm down a minute and let's think about this. But when we first got we just got this 14 acres, and, we're very excited, but it was still a overgrazed horse property. It wasn't very great pasture area, but it still was 14 acres. It was a lot. And I would say more than half of it is pasture. So I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and he's like, hey, there's this local farm. They're a pasture raised organic farm that was local to me, fairly close, and they were going out of business. So they were selling everything: pigs, pastured pigs, steers, chickens. It was a huge, huge farm. And so I ended up buying 2 steers from them, and they were already a year old, and they were already trained to a single wire. I think one of them was an Angus Jersey and the other one was an Angus. But, I figured, well, this is a good opportunity to get my feet wet on raising some beef. And it was a huge opportunity, and we did it. And we only raised them for a year, but looking back, our pasture area was not good. I feel like we didn't have enough. I was buying hay, and this was just me just figuring it out, of how to raise these animals.
When I think about horse pasture, and when I'm thinking my neighbors or whoever around, when I see horse pastures, for the most part, and I hate to lump everyone together because I know not everyone does this, but some of the horse pastures are some of the worst cared for pastures, because those horses just love to nibble it down, and then it's grazed to the ground, and the weeds are just going crazy. So it takes a while to repair that. So you're still in that phase of repairing your land, but you're still able to utilize livestock and get some value out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I raised them and I moved them around often. It was only 2, but, I learned a lot. They taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And, like where, and water too. Like water, we didn't have water up on our higher parts of our property. So, running hoses, all that, it was difficult, but it was just a learning experience. And I knew that like these 2 steers that I bought were just there to teach me a lesson, teach me, like this is it. This is such a teaching opportunity for me. And it was great in that aspect, but I'm glad I did it because it really opened my eyes on what my land really needed.
Now, one thing you mentioned about your pigs and your cattle, you butchered your own animals. How did that go? To me, just a second, I'll give you a little bit of back history. I grew up on a farm. We always butchered our own chickens. So I know about that. I can handle that. I can remember one time my dad and grandfather, I usually call him grandpa, and my grandpa butchered a hog. And I was really small at the time, and I only remember a little about it. But it seems like, to me, that's a huge undertaking that I would be a little anxiety about going through and doing.
For sure. There's definitely, yes, it's not easy at all. But, over the, since we had lived out here, we met some good people in the community that were doing that. They were butchering their own hogs, their own steers, so I would always try to, hey, do you need help? Like, I just want to come and just look. I just want to come and just be around it. And so, for 5-6 years, I tried to be there at least once a year around it, and that helped me with my mind of like getting over that fear of that, to be more comfortable butchering an animal, like a big animal like that. And so when it was time, I was like, I want to do it for myself. Like, I just wanted to try it and see if I liked it. I don't think anyone enjoys it really, but, just to be more comfortable and confident that, hey, I could do this, probably better for the animal if I do it. You don't have to, it's less stressful, I think, on the animal. Like, you don't have to load them up in a trailer and then haul them, an hour away or something. And then they stay in another facility, and somebody else does it, like, I feel like it's probably better for the animal if I do it. Luckily, we don't have a tractor. I've never had a tractor before. That's another obstacle because you start to think of different ways to do things. And so luckily we have a big, 16-foot tall horse stall, the horse barn. So I tied up a electric winch to the opening of it. And when you don't have a tractor, like say, whether it's a pig or a steer, we're always moving them around the property. So by the time they're ready to be butchered, we have moved them down towards the barn where we want to butcher them. So that way we don't have to drag them, or pick them up. So we drop them right where the winch is, and then we hoist them up there. So there's no dragging. And then honestly, you could watch all the YouTube videos and read all the books, but there's nothing like getting your hands dirty and just doing it and getting your mind over, like, get your mind over the fact that this probably will not look like meat that you buy at the grocery store. Like, get that out of your head. Like, it's not going to look like that. In the end, you're putting meat in the freezer for your family. You're not caring what it looks like. And so I think when you think about that, then, okay, I could do this. Like, it's okay if it's ugly. In the end, if it's super ugly, you could turn it into hamburger meat. It's just a matter of, doing it. And it was great. It turned out, I mean, doing the pigs have been good. We've done, I think 5-6 pigs in the last few years. We did two of our steers last year. when you invite people too in the community or invite your friends over, that helps too.
Oh, yeah. The justification there that the animal, it's a better case scenario for the animal than going to a processor. And I love the idea of that because I love the idea of self-sufficiency and being able to do it yourself. My wife loves the idea of meat coming from the supermarket wrapped in plastic and stuff. It's took her a while. She did not grow up on a farm, and somehow she married me and quickly learned our beef doesn't come that way. And she's adjusted to that, but she is nowhere to the point that I think she could handle me doing the processing. I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving her enough credit there, but how was your spouse? Was she on board with this? Did it take some time?
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, this has been her dream just as much as my dream.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're both on board from the get-go. And honestly, I think that's important. Maybe we wouldn't be as successful doing this if it was her dream or my dream, not both. And so I think that's important if the couple is looking to do something like this, you kind of have to be both on board. Now, I know it's not always like that. It'd be a lot easier if you both were like 100% all in.
My wife is fully supportive of having more natural meat, better quality, grass finished. She's all in favor of all that. She just would prefer me to do the hard stuff.
Yeah, like I'm the killer in the family, but my wife, she loves the piecing out, like the actual butchering, the processing. Like she's in there. I mean, she went in there with the half a hog or half a steer, and she's in there breaking it up. And that's her thing. And so that's great. I mean, that's a good team there, like somebody has to be the killer, unfortunately, but she's likes doing the eviscerating, the piecing out, which is awesome. And then our daughter too. I mean, she's 11 years old now, so she's grown up in this lifestyle. She's in there with us, and she's not afraid to get dirty either.
Very good, Jason. We've gone through what your journey and what you're doing there really quick, and we didn't touch on a lot of things, but we do need to move on a little bit. But before we move on, can you tell us maybe about a challenge that you didn't anticipate?
Leaving a 9-to-5 job to start this homestead lifestyle, that has been a challenge of working for myself. I mean, I know it's not necessarily about farming really, but it's just trying to figure out an income for myself and for our family that will allow us to live this lifestyle. That has been very difficult. I mean, early on, it was a lot of yeses. I would say yes to everything because I didn't want to go back to an office job. I was a handyman. I was, woodworker, whatever it is that was there, I was ready to do it. And at the same time, working on growing a YouTube channel, that has been something that is not all we do now, but one of the main things of how we're able to live this lifestyle is creating the content that we do. It's not something that happened overnight, and not sure if I would do the same, like just leave a job like that, knowing how hard it would be. I don't know if I can do that again because it's so difficult, and I was not used to that. I was always used to working for somebody. So that has definitely been one of the biggest challenges that we've had to face and continue to figure it out. And we're still figuring it out. But for whatever reason, we're able to make it work.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I still have my 9-to-5 job, and it's a passion there for me, and I really enjoy it. But at times I think, boy, I'd love to just spend all my time on the farm. And that's something my wife and I've talked about. I don't have an answer for it yet because I do enjoy I feel like I work in education. I think education is a passion of mine as well as farming. Partly leads to this podcast. So, but it's a conversation we have about that 9-to-5, and leaving it would be kind of scary about
Yeah.
Where's that money coming from? How are we going to survive? Yeah.
Right.
Now, one more thing before we jump to the overgrazing section. You'd mentioned you haven't got any goats or sheep, but you have tried a lot of others. What do you think the next type of animal you'll get that you haven't got, or are you good where you are?
Yeah, currently we just butchered our last broiler chickens of the year. Currently we have 11 turkeys and 7 kuni pigs. Those are grazing pigs, and by the way, like they are amazing pigs. They do not root up. They do not make a big mud hole. They graze like steers. But I feel like the next thing I do want to try is a sheep. Right now, I'm trying to get my perimeter fence reestablished. It's a horse fence. It has the single wires, high tensile, which was already there, but it's been neglected. It was way overgrown. There are like trees growing in it. So I'm trying to establish that perimeter fence first before I get any other animal, like big animals. Even though, we use the electric netting, which has been super helpful and allowed us to do a lot of the grazing. I think I pushed my luck getting the 2 steers without having a perimeter fence. I'm trying to do things smart now.
Oh, yeah. Now, of course, I've got one more question before we get to the overgrazing. How does the kuni pigs taste?
I don't know. I've never tasted one yet. I hear that everyone tells me that they are the best, like Kobe beef of pork. Like they're like a red meat. That's what I hear, because they're mainly a lard pig. So that's something that we're going to have to figure out. And now I bought a breeding pair from that same farm that I got the 2 steers from last year. And so they had piglets for us. And so I'm hoping, they're going to be good for us to put in the freezer, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what they taste like. And that's going to probably be the ultimate test if we want to continue to raise them.
Right. I've talked about getting a few pigs just to raise for our own, so we have that pork that we raised. The consideration is being kuni pigs. I just don't know. I haven't tried their meat, and I love their dispositions and the grazing ability of them. The most important thing is if my wife doesn't like it on a plate, then we probably won't do it. So I'm interested to see how they go for you. And that's a great segment into our overgrazing section where we take a deeper dive into something you're doing on your operation. You were talking about a deep bedding system for them.
So previously, when we're just on our 1.5 acres, I didn't want a big muddy hole of a mess with the pigs. And that's what always, a smelly mess. Cause that's, typically when you think about the raising pigs, like it's going to smell. My neighbors are going to hate me, like all these things, people started telling me all these things. And then, I started reading more about like kind of Joel Stallaton on how he raised his pigs in the winter. He raises them in a structure. At the time I had helped my friend Justin Rhodes build his pig shelter. He had raised a carport. I had built a carport at his place, and he raised a couple pigs in there just to kind of show people that you could raise pigs in a smaller scale. And so after that, I was like, okay, I think we could raise 2 pigs. And so what I ended up doing was kind of taking things that I had saw other people do, and I built a high tunnel, like a greenhouse. And it was about 12 foot wide by 40 feet long. And I enclosed half of it, which I put a wall at a 2x4, and I put a couple door and gates on them. And I covered the parts where I had the 2 pigs in with hog panels around the high tunnel and also corrugated metal roofing so they couldn't get out. And then I raised the 2 pigs in there in a deep bedding system of wood chips. And so every time that they would poop, I would cover it with wood chip. And that's usually like in the morning when I fed them, or in the evening when I went back in there to check up on them. I trained them to nipple water, like with a 55-gallon barrel of water. And I put that in there with them. And so I just kept covering their wood chips. Now I only raised these pigs for about 7 months. They're just a fast growing pig. And then so being on the 1.5 acres, I still had some grass. I had grasses there, and I had some areas that I did want them to till up. And so I would move them in and out of this structure throughout the 7 months. And they would maybe only be in a spot on grass, maybe 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, I'd move them back into the structure, and they'd be in there for like another 2 or 3 weeks. I fed them and they were fine. You would never know that I had pigs because nothing smelled. There wasn't like a big muddy hole everywhere. And I just moved them in and out of there throughout the 7 weeks. And after we had put them in the freezer, I had this big pile of wood chips, composts from their manure and the wood chips. And so then I scooped up all those wood chips, put them in the garden, like a big pile of them. At the time we had meat chickens, broilers, and they were not Cornish crosses. They were the Red Rangers. The Red Rangers they're more willing to scratch and peck. I would release them on this big pile of wood chips, and they would just continue to scratch and peck at it and continue to break down the wood chips. And then I would cover it with a tarp throughout. And I will do this at the like fall, beginning of winter or end of fall, cover it with the tarp, and then throughout the whole winter, have it covered. And then by the time springtime comes and it's ready time to plant in the garden, I spread out all that wood chips in the garden, and it's basically, fertilizer for your garden. And so I was able to do that, and that grew our produce on what we had in our garden like 2 times as much. And it's just by using all that and putting it back to the earth. And and it was great. I mean, I plan on doing that same thing here on our 14 acres, just for the compost aspect of it. I mean, we have more space here to move pigs in, and at that time we didn't, but here we have more space, so I don't have to do that. But I enjoyed having all that compost material because that's going to help our compacted soil that we have here, and it's going to help our garden grow over the years as we do that.
Oh yeah, I can see a huge benefit for your garden by doing that. It just gives you that ready supply of fertilizer to get out on it. Well, Jason, it's about time we move on to our famous 4 questions. Same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our very first question: what is your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
Yeah, I would have to say, early on, I think my first one that I read was The Pastured Poultry for Profits by Joel Salatin. And really pretty much any book that he writes. And that's probably one of the first books I read like all the way through, and I read it in like 2 days or something. Because I was so excited about it, just starting our journey, and that kind of got me pumped up to raise our own broilers. But since then, I got, I think by like Alan Nation, Jim Garish, I think one's Management Intensive Grazing. So I think I have it sitting out here somewhere. Quality Pasture, any one of these books, one of those guys. I think, or Stockman, anything from Stockman Grass Farmer, the publication. Any one of those are great.
All excellent resources there. Actually, on this Joel Salatin, are you using his type of chicken tractors, or are you using a different type?
No, when I had my office job, I would do research on chicken tractors because I knew I didn't want to do, I didn't know much about them, about how to do it. So, I think his hold like 75 chickens, and I felt like that was too much for us. Like I only wanted to do 25. And so I've never have done his style of coops. And plus I heard, he needed like a dolly to move it. And so I felt like it was heavy. I thought like, I really wanted my wife to be able to move it, if she had to. Also now my 11-year-old. So I started doing the John Siskovich style chicken tractors where you could walk into it, and they're a lot lighter. They're smaller. So I do those type of chicken tractors now.
Our second question: what is your favorite tool on the farm?
I would say 2 of them. 2 of them are definitely the Premier One Netting and the solar chargers. even though the solar chargers are, they could be kind of hit and miss sometimes, but they have worked for us. They allowed us to be able to, rotate all of our animals. Our steers, I had our 2 steers on a solar charger, and our pigs, our chickens, everybody. And without that, we wouldn't be able to do that. And then another one is the tool to build something, which is a battery operated circular saw. I mean, I've built so many things just with that one tool. That's all you need, really. And I wouldn't be able to do like all that stuff. I mean, it's remote, I don't have to have it corded. So that's got to be my favorite tool to build stuff with.
I love battery operated tools. It's just shocking to me how much power they can put out. And yeah, I love my battery operated tools. Our third question, Jason, is what would you tell someone just getting started?
I would say it's so hard to have patience, especially for, I think, most people in this space. We're go-getters, like we are doers, and we want to get out there and start doing stuff. And it's so difficult. And not to say you can't do stuff, but like just be patient. And like I try to remind myself of that, when we bought our 14 acres, is that, the grass is not going to heal overnight. And at the same time, if anything, get 25 broiler chickens and put them in a movable coop. Even if you don't have the means to get cows yet, or steers or sheep or anything like that. But if you build a movable coop, and it can be so simple to build, and just put 25 meat chickens in there and move them around as often as you can, because they poop a lot and they will fertilize your land like so much faster than anything. And if you could do that, like move them around on the grass, move them around, and keep doing that over and over again, I think eventually, you'll get there.
Excellent advice. And chickens, you run them over anything, it'll grow good grass. It's amazing what chicken manure will do. And lastly, Jason, where can others find out more about you?
Yeah, you can find us at our website, sowtheland.com, and we document everything that we've done here, and we continue to do on our Sow the Land YouTube channel. And you can find us there, like on Instagram and on all the social medias. And we just document what we're doing and sharing what we learn and continue to learn. And because whatever we learn, we're going to share it with everyone else.
Well, Jason, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun. It was nice meeting you. And thanks for having me on.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. And every episode features a grass farmer and their operation. If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to keep the conversation going, visit our community at community.grazinggrass.com. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Grazing Grass Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for past and future episodes. We also welcome guests to share about their own grass farming journey. So if you're interested, fill out the form on grazinggrass.com under the Be Our Guest link. Until next time, keep on grazing grass.